President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping had a phone call today, with Trump writing on social media that he made progress on getting approval for a deal over TikTok. Trump saying in their conversation they also made progress on talks to do with trade as well as the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Trump adding that he will meet with Xi at an APEC summit later this year in South Korea, and that he would travel to China early next year, and that Xi would visit the U.S. at an appropriate time. Let's bring in Young Sung, foreign policy specialist and China program director at the Stimson Center. Good to have you with us, and thanks for taking the time today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, your thoughts on this call? Any breakthroughs, positive signs? What do you make of it?
Well, the call is certainly very positive, right? You see the Chinese readout calling the call very practical, constructive, and positive. Well, that's a very high mark from Beijing's perspective. So I think what has led to this phone call is the deal that the two sides have negotiated over TikTok in Madrid over the weekend. So for the two leaders to have a phone call, we know that they have to have something to agree to or something to announce. I think TikTok paved the ground for that. And of course, everyone is thinking about the same question. A talk is a technicality, but people are focused on the prospect of a leadership summit somewhere in October, November. Now we know that they're going to meet on the sideline of APEC, which for the Chinese is not as good as a state visit to Beijing, which they originally hoped for. But now Trump make it clear that he is hoping to visit next year. I think we are counting on that the trade negotiation will run their positive result to pave the ground for that visit.
Tell me about the TikTok deal, because we've heard that it may end up being owned by Oracle in the U.S., and the Chinese may agree to that divestiture, currently owned by a Chinese company. Your thoughts on how this is going to play out? TikTok, hugely popular. The suspension of it has been delayed numerous times by President Trump. And of course, a lot of people are wondering what's going to happen with TikTok.
Well, it looks like if the deal is going to go through, and it looks like it will, we are going to continue to have TikTok, American TikTok, the app, operational. It will not be shut down as threatened by the previous administration and discussed by the earlier days of the Trump administration. So I see that in terms of the deal, based on the available details of what it looks like, I think both sides have gained something, but both sides have also given up something, right? From the Chinese point of view, they are giving up 80% of the ownership of the American TikTok as the ownership, which is in violation of what the Chinese government has said before, that this is a robbery. This is a Chinese company, and the U.S. cannot force the Chinese to sell. Well, now they are going to sell 80% of the ownership of the American TikTok. But on the other hand, the app itself will retain the Chinese algorithm for good technical reasons, right? The algorithm has worked so far. So for them to change algorithm is like changing the nature of the app. So they're going to retain the Chinese algorithm, which I think from the US side is indeed a national security concern, because that potentially will give the Chinese access to data and access to those data that are vital to American nationals, right? So I think both sides have given up something, but they are both willing to make those concessions in order to reach a deal. I think that shows how important the trade negotiation is for both sides.
Young Sung joining me from Washington, China program director at the Stimson Center. Thanks for coming on the program with us here in Canada today. Much appreciated.